Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm here at Carver Lake Park, which has a bunch of mountain bike trails, but I decided to take this opportunity to use this curb behind me to show you this thing that I've been wanting to show forever about how to ride off a curb and learn how to pull up lightly on your front end so you can come off the curb smooth. This is something you should practice before taking it to drops. And something you can just do pretty much anywhere in your neighborhood or wherever, and it's pretty slick. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch to filming me going off the curb, and then I'll do the voiceover thing that I think works really well on my computer. Let's get to it. Okay, so here we are riding up to the curb. This first one, all I'm gonna do is roll off the curb, and you'll see how quickly my front wheel drops. I'm centered on the bike in the attack position, right pedal forward, cranks level, and then I'm just going to roll off the curb. So here it is, regular speed, and then we will do slow motion. Alright, now let's slow it down. Okay, I paused this just so I can talk a little bit about what's going to happen. As I approach the curb, I'm in that attack position as I talked about. Cranks level, that's how you want to approach everything when you're doing drops or any other technical thing. Now, what's going to happen is as soon as the front wheel goes off the curb, it's going to drop right away. It'll actually land where you see the white part of the concrete right here. Boom. And then go off. That's a pretty immediate drop. Gravity takes charge really quickly. So this is why you don't want to just ride off of drops. I mean, if it's only a few inches, maybe even a foot or something like that, you'll be fine, but it's not the ideal way to ride off of drops. You definitely want to come off with the bike at minimum level. So here I'm going to do a little bit of a light pull on the front end. This is probably what you'll end up doing on almost every drop with a downside landing. Is all you really need to do is a light pull, weight back, and you will be fine. Even if you nosedive a tiny bit, it won't be enough to send you over the handlebars. So let's watch my technique as I come off the curb. You will notice here that my front wheel does land first, and it lands on the parking lot before my back wheel comes off the curb. That's ideal when you have a downside landing because then your bike already starts to pitch. And if you watch my last video, which I'll put at the end of this video, of me doing some actual drops, you'll see that my bike comes off level but then starts to nosedive for the landing pretty early on in the drop. And for most drops, that's what you're going to want. But let's see this in slow motion so we can see what I'm doing with my body. So notice what I do here. I pull up lightly on the bars, my weight's back, and I come off the curb. What I find interesting about this is there will be people all day long that tell you not to do this. So right here is the ideal position as you're coming off of a drop. And the reason why I tell you to practice this on a curb first is for the very reason that people tell you that this shouldn't be the technique you use. I actually think this is the ideal technique to use, but it's not a technique you learn while you're on a big drop. It's something you go to the curb and practice and get pretty dialed before you take it to an actual drop. So this is a light pull. Now let's watch what happens when I do a bigger pull. So let's first watch this in full speed, and I'm going to pull a little harder. The idea is I want to land level. Why would you ever want to do this? Well, this is if you're going to drop to more of a flat surface and you don't really need to nosedive for your landing. And this is a really good technique to practice because if you can learn how to pull up on the front end long enough to ride off the curb, that's a good skill to have. It's pretty much, the very prerequisite or beginning of learning a manual is you're pulling up hard enough to just kind of coast for a brief moment and come off the curb. I'm going at a medium speed here. In a moment after this one, I will show you how you can go faster, and then the faster you go, the less pull you have to do to get both wheels to land at the same time. So this is medium speed. We're just going to go off the curb, and we're going to land, I believe, close to both wheels at the same time. Let's watch. So I believe that was a little rear wheel heavy, but it's close concept. You either both wheels at the same time or rear wheel heavy. What I always say is if you're on a full suspension bike, both wheels at the same time is fine. If you're on a hardtail, especially like a BMX bike or something, you want to land rear wheel first, because then you can use your legs to kind of compress the landing a bit, and it's not so hard on your arms. But that's really up to the rider and their riding style. But I generally try to land a little bit rear wheel first, regardless of whatever bike I'm on. But it doesn't always end up that way. But as long as it's close, you're good to go. Now let's watch this in slow motion. This is going to be very similar to the first one, but I pull harder. Weight is back more. And then I come down, and it definitely was rear wheel first on this one. So one of the things I'm going to caution right now is if you are doing a downside drop, you do not want to pull this hard and have the rear wheel come down first. The thing that'll happen if you do that is you'll do what I call looping out. The back wheel will come down and you have a downsided landing. Your weight will be too far back, and then you will loop out. Not a good thing to go over the bike backwards. Probably better than going over forward, to be honest, because going over forward, head injuries, shoulder injuries, everything else. Going backwards, tailbone, butt, whatever is what gets injured. So yeah, definitely this is something you would do only if you were going to a flat landing. I would never recommend pulling this hard going into a down. That being said, I still think this is a really good one to practice. There's all kinds of uses for this skill of being able to literally manual off of something and land rear wheel first or the bike level. Super handy skill to have, and it just gives you that much more bike control and understanding of the mechanics of how to ride your bike properly. Just to stress again, do not pull this hard if you're going off a drop that has a downside landing, like the video I'm going to link at the end of this video. Speed is everything. On this one, you're going to see, we're going to go in regular speed. You'll see how fast I'm going, and when I go really fast, I barely have to pull up on the handlebars to come off level. So if you're doing a drop, and especially if you have a little bit of a distance to clear before you get to the downside, you need more speed. If you have more speed, you can do all the same motions. You don't have to pull up harder, you don't have to hop drop, you don't have to do anything. You just have more speed, and then you just give that light little tug on the handlebars. And when I say light, like the first one that we did here where the front wheel landed first before the back wheel, and it's basically leaning back, and just you'd feel a little bit of pressure under your fingers when I say light tug. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm going really fast, and then I just barely even give the front wheel a tug, like, and I mean barely, like I'm not putting in hardly any effort. So we'll watch it in full speed, and then we'll slow it down. Okay, so now that I've actually watched that, that was probably a little bit too much pull on the handlebars for that speed, because you did see the rear wheel come down first, and that is not ideal if you have a downside drop. Perfect if you're going to land flat like I'm doing here, but for downside drops you even want less pull than that. That is actually, in a nutshell, why I highly recommend doing this practice on a curb first before you take it to drops, because you can play around with speed and how much pull and all of that long before you take it to a drop and have your skills dialed. Okay, so here it is in slow motion, and you'll notice that I don't pull back as hard or go that far behind the rear wheel, just a tiny little bit of body movement there. So you can see right here that I am not nearly as far back as I was on the last one, where I'm pulling and going back quite a bit more than this. So when you're going faster, it's less effort and much easier to do drops. So let's check out a couple other techniques. This next one is also controversial. This is the hop drop, and you'll hear people on YouTube talking about how this is not the ideal way to do a drop. And again, I disagree. There's reasons you should know how to hop drop. Like I've said before, if there's a little bump at the end or some kind of thing that's going to catch your rear wheel, you want to know how to hop drop. The key to using this on a curb is to learn how to hop far enough to where your back wheel doesn't tag the curb on your way down. So the curb is the ideal place to learn this. Is you just keep practicing and get it so you can hop and clear the curb, because that's ideal. If your rear wheel tags the curb, and then in the case of a drop, your rear wheel tags a drop, that's going to send your front end nose diving and possibly send you over the bars. So the hop drop is a bit more advanced of a move and something that you definitely want to practice on a curb and make sure you know how to hop, high enough and far enough to clear the curb. Now let's slow this down and you'll see me do the traditional bunny hop and off the curb. One thing to note on this one is the fact that I lift my front wheel first. So here you see me pulling up my front wheel first, and then my back wheel comes shortly after. This is a traditional style bunny hop where you pull the front wheel up first and then the back wheel. One of the reasons I really like this technique is because you don't have to hop as far to clear something. So in this case, my back wheel is coming up closer to the curb, so when I lift my back wheel, I don't have very far to go to clear the curb. So I feel like this is a safer way to do hops, but if you watch my video previous to this one, you'll notice that I did two wheels at the same time when I was actually doing a hop in Cuyuna off the drop. And the reason I did that is because, one, I wanted to tweak my bike a little to the side, and two, I wanted to angle for the drop a lot sooner, and I feel comfortable with doing that. So for me in my brain, I do things pretty instantly, and it's very instinctual for why I do things one way or the other. Here I know I'm going to land flat, so I'm going to hop in more of a traditional way, front wheel first to back wheel. In Cuyuna, I know that I'm going to have this downside, so I don't really need to land wheels level or rear wheel first. So what I do there is I hop both wheels at the same time. It's just something that comes with me having ridden for such a long time, and I just know in my mind which way I need to do it. Lots of practice, many years of riding, and it's just a very instinctual thing for me to do. But landing to flat, I always like front wheel first to back wheel. Landing downside, I'll generally do both wheels at the same time. And the last one that I'm going to show you is what I actually call a true wheelie drop. You ride a wheelie off the drop. Why would you ever want to do this? Well, if you noticed, I was going really slow coming into the curb here. So the reason you would do this is if you can't have speed going into your drop. If you have to be going really slow, then you need to do what I call the wheelie drop, and that's when you pedal and go off the drop. This is more like a trials move, and I think it's pretty advanced. Something where you just first go out to the flats and practice doing wheelies by pedaling. Lots of factors come into play here. You need to be in the correct gear, you need to pedal power, do all that stuff to do this. But a very important skill to have, especially for low speed maneuvering. I use this one all the time when I'm doing more or less urban kind of stuff. where I'm maybe riding off of a bench or some ledge and there's not really a good run up to drop. I use it in BMX also, and it's just one of those skills that's a good thing to practice, and a curb is the perfect place to practice it. So let's watch it in slow motion. Okay, here I am in extremely slow approach. I did that intentionally, and then as I approach the curb, what you'll see me do is I'll just give it a little punch of power and pull back, shift my weight back right here. Boom. And I just power off the curb. Super slick move, comes into play when you don't have a lot of speed. This is a good one to just practice with a curb and get really good at, and definitely not something I recommend you try doing with a downside drop. The place you would do this is if you're gonna land on flat and you want to be able to ride off and land rear wheel first or both wheels at the same time. I do have a video from last year where I talked a little bit about it. What's a little awkward about this one is sometimes you land with your pedals in an unusual position. So normally when you come off of drops and you land, your pedals are always in that level position. When you do wheelie drops like this, your cranks could be up and down, perpendicular to the ground, they could be flat, they could be level, your opposite foot could be forward, they could be somewhere in between. You just never really know. So just be aware of that. Not such a big deal when you're going off a curb, but if you start going off of things that are a little bit higher, that landing can be a little tricky because your legs are not in the most ideal position. So that's it. This is the video I've been wanting to do for a while, and really my point here isn't to go super strong on the whole technique and everything. My point in this video is to go out and practice on a curb. Practice, practice, practice. Doing this kind of practice right here gives you skills in so many ways. You'll all of a sudden realize when you come up to like a pile of rocks on the trail and stuff like that, how much your riding will improve just even over the small things. This doesn't really only apply to doing drops. It applies to all aspects of mountain biking and just overall improving of your bike control. So I highly recommend doing this, and I'll go ahead and do some videos on some other skills techniques you can do that will improve your overall control. Things like track stands, hopping in place, all of those kinds of things. Really good things you can just practice, and it really just gives you that that fine-tuned bike control that is needed on the trail. If you want to be a super smooth rider and have your skills dialed, this is the way to do it right here. Okay, so there you have it. I did 3 main variations. I did the kind of, I don't really want to call it a wheelie drop. I want to just call it like lightly pulling up, trying to come level off the drop. And then I did a hop drop, and I actually did what I do call a wheelie drop, where you actually power, you pedal drop. You only really need to do that one when you're going really slow. If you just don't have enough speed to like pop up the front wheel and drop or something like that, you can pedal drop. But when I say really slow, I mean really slow. And if you look at the video, I was rolling pretty slow. So yeah, I hope you really like this video. I'm trying to do what I can to try to really get this concept through to you so you can understand it. Please like and subscribe. Peace.